Hey guys, so today I want to make a video going over like the best mid-league builds, the meta defining builds. I have this full list here of also creators you can follow as well. But yeah, pretty much just my opinion of what are the best builds for specifically, softcore trade. Obviously hardcore SSF can be a little bit different. But yeah, for softcore trade, what are the best builds? In my opinion, these are gonna be the best builds. I'm gonna categorized in different categories. So like all-rounder builds, league start builds, map blasters, and like builds from niche content. I'll have the creators, all names listed here of people you can follow. There's obviously other people playing these builds as well. These are just people that I know that are playing it or are trusted for build making. But yeah, top mid-league builds for 3.27. Not necessarily league starters. Some of these are the ones that are league starter. I'll have it listed. These will require currency, maybe anywhere from 50 divines to 200 divines, depending on which build you're looking on here. Obviously, a lot of these builds also scale into that multi-mirror range and, can just destroy content. These are the league defining builds, at least in my opinion. So yeah, not necessarily a tier list to say, because I don't really think there is like a single strongest build of the league. There's definitely very strong builds, but it's something like, 3.25 where Lightning Strike was just insane, or maybe like 3.9 Held Stack or stuff like that. All these builds are really strong, but I don't think there's any like single best build this league. It definitely depends on what type of content you're doing. And yeah, I'm also going to list forms that these builds also do. So if you like a certain type of form, then you can pick one of these builds that suits your needs. Anyway, let's get started. So yeah, let's start with the best all-arounder builds. So generally all-rounders, they're not the best anything, but they can do all content at a pretty comfortable level and usually at a pretty decent budget as well. So they might not be the fastest mapper character, they might not be the best Uber bosser, right? But they can do that content and they can do it at a generally good fast pace. So the first build I'll say is Held Stacker Elementalist Penance Brand. Manny 2 is playing this. I would say it's generally not league start friendly, but it's also not too expensive to get started with. But yeah, this is definitely one of the best all-around builds this league. It's definitely won't be as tanky as other builds, so that is something that scares you. We want to be more tanky. You can get pretty tanky in this build, but definitely won't be tanky as a full like ES stacker, in stacker, right? Anyway, this build revolves around the new ring that came out this league for Herald Stack in itself, and the new Herald Ascendancy or new Bloodline Ascendancy that gives you a Herald node. So yeah, very strong build. If you never played Penance Brand, I can highly recommend it. Very fun. You have auto targeting on your Penance Brand. You just aim on the ground anywhere, auto targets, and then your explosions just chain clear. So it's really comfy to play, really satisfying to play. I can always recommend a Penance Brander. They are really fun to play, and they're one of the builds where you can just invest in like infinite currency into if you want to keep investing more and more into your build. In my opinion, so for forms, in my opinion, it's best in map blasting content with high density. While I don't think it's as fast as other map blasting builds, it can be really fast, definitely a high budget. That is where it excels the most. And it can do Uber bosses. This build can easily reach like 1 billion plus DPS. So you just insta-kill Uber bosses. But yeah, stuff like Scare Farm in tier 17 and like Boss Russian, Stack Deck Farm or whatever. Any like nice high density farm, this build will excel at. Next all around the build, I'll say is the Accuracy Instacker. Palstron made this league. Definitely not league start viable. It is a build you will have to transit into once you have enough currency. Definitely one of the new best all around builds in this league. Extremely high attack speed, can play as any claw skill in the game. If you're a person that likes testing, different type of skills, there's definitely a lot you can do with this skill. Reeve, Lightning Strike, Flicker. People are playing a bunch of different, setups on this build because like really any claw skill does work. One downside, and this is a downside, is that you are claws, therefore you have to use Whirling Blades, which does feel worse than like walking builds or Frostblink builds. I mean, desync can definitely be a massive issue for some people playing Whirling Blades. It does feel bad in some certain maps. Any maps that's like indoors, Whirling Blades honestly just feels terrible in. So it really is a massive downside. But if you don't mind the downside, then yeah, it is a great build. So this is best for content where Whirling Blades doesn't annoy you. So I would say like tier 60.5 open layouts, stuff like Dunes and Strand is where this build shines. I would 100% avoid indoor maps. Whirling Blades can be very frustrating on those. You can also obviously do tier 17 maps, but I usually feel like tier 17 Fortress, Whirling Blades can sometimes feel clunky, definitely doable. But yeah, just keep in mind, Whirling Blades does have the drawbacks. You can't really turn this into a walking build. You do have to use Whirling Blades for your movement skill. I'll say the third build here, once again, these are not listed in order of strength. These are just randomly listed. But yeah, the third one here is Mana Stock Kinetic Blast of Clustering. So you can follow Spicy Sushi or Sepk. This build is kind of league start viable. The build that I recommended here is not the same build that you league start as, because this mana stack KB of clustering requires light turn resist stacking with the amulet. The league start version, at least from what I can see, generally doesn't use that. So yeah, it is mostly league start viable, but the build will change a little bit as you progress. Anyway, it is definitely the best all-rounder KB build, but it does have a downside of being the slowest KB builds. Compared to Necro, compared to Deadeye, or compared to Elementalist, it is the slowest one. And the reason for that is because you go Indigon, you don't really get very high attack speed, which feels worse for mapping, right? Being like 2 to 3 attack speeds per second, it's just going to feel worse than 6, 7, 8, or 9 attack speeds per second. This is definitely best for content where speed doesn't matter. Now, the build's not slow by any means, but it is slower than other KB builds. So I think it is best where, like, you know, you want like high damage and speed doesn't matter as much. Stuff like, you know, the Blight Titanic farm, pretty good at that. You know, boxes, you don't really need high speed clear for boxes, pretty good at that. Stuff like that, where if it's just like map blasting content, the other KB builds are going to be better. But yeah, this is just the best all-rounder version. So if you want to do Ubers, you want to do like whatever type of content, this build will serve the best for that. Next, I want to say the best late league starter build. In my opinion, this is still easily Zerker Slams. So while this is a build you don't really want to spend 100 plus divines on, it's still by far the best league starter if you're late to a league. It can do all Ubers. If you're pretty knowledgeable how to gear, I would say easily under 10 divines, this league, all Ubers is really, really doable. So yeah, it's just a good build if you want to experience pretty much all of PoE1 content. If you're a new player, or if you just want to do everything before PoE2 comes out, slams are just honestly ridiculous. They are extremely, extremely strong. I think Ben did the Uber race in like 17 hours on a fresh SSF hardcore slammer. They are just absolutely insane, and they scale, you know, really, really well. Once again, not a character you want to spend like a mirror on, or even like 200 plus divines on. Usually want to swap at that point. But for a character that can do all content at the lowest budget, yeah, slams is probably the best for that. And also, it is definitely the best SSF build as well, if you are curious. And I would recommend to, you know, I'm Exile as a full build guide on this. Obviously, Ben has his character. I don't think it's a guide, but he has a full character. There's a lot of people play slams. You know, if you want to play Slayer slams, obviously Karn. But yeah. Now, I want to talk about, at least in my opinion, the best map blasters this league. So pretty much focus on speed and clear. May not be entirely the best for Uber content, or maybe some content that requires higher defense, but these are extremely fast map blaster builds. I do think the Held Stacker does almost fit into this category because it is really, really, really fast. But at the lower and mid budgets, this is definitely slower than these builds. But at the higher end, this build definitely competes with these type of builds as well. Yeah, I just wanted to mention that. But obviously, KB Deadeye, the build I play, it's also league start viable. This build is, you know, if you see me play, it's absolutely insane for high-end map blasting. With Nimis, there's no aiming whatsoever. You click anywhere and you kill everything on screen. And it's also, most importantly, for a map blaster build, it is all map mod viable. So if you want to do risk strategies, this build can do it. I can do every single map mod on this build. So yeah, it's very important for map blaster to be all map mod viable, which this build does actually check off. Just, you know, Deadeye is always on the squishy side. That is the downside, but it's always kind of the best clear. And the reason for that is that a Deadeye Ascendancy is just made for clear speed. You have stuff like +1 chain for free, wall bounce, +2 projectiles, action speed, right? This is just stuff that is just made for clear speed. The other Ascendancies just do not have access to. So yeah, Deadeye can be on the squishy side, but on the higher end, you know, once you acquire Headhunter, mapping does feel really safe. I wouldn't recommend to do Ubers, but it is something you can do at least once if you want to do it at least once on this build, but it's not something I would recommend. It's best for just fast mapping farms, of course, you know, stuff like Tier 17 Scarabs, the Appa Divination farm, Boss Russian, any mapping strategy where you just want to, you know, rush through the map as fast as possible. Yeah, this build is going to excel at that. And most importantly, because you are Deadeye and because you do have wall bounds, pretty much any layout is also good for this build. You know, it doesn't matter if you're doing dunes, doesn't really matter if you're doing like cells. You're really equally as good in every single type of layout because you are mostly a walking build, moving at 200% plus movement speed. So yeah, it does feel nice, all layout viable as well. Next, I would say, especially for a build on the cheaper side, is Xang/Reap Elementalist by Arutu. This is also league start viable. The only expensive piece for this build is the Foulborn Barracks. If you want to double explode, if you want a single explode, it's really, really cheap. But yeah, auto chain explodes with the new Foulborn Barracks, which is primarily what this build is really abusing. You can really just clear with Frostblink. Obviously for bosses, you do have to use Xang/Reap. Yeah, won't scale as high with a Mira Plus budget compared to other builds, but for the price, it's, you know, really, really solid. You know, for a low/mid budget build, if you're someone with only like, you know, 50 to 100 divines, this build is really, really solid. You can also do Ubers at higher investment. Once again, I feel like with my build as well, it's not a build you would play to do Ubers, but it is a build that can do Ubers. And also, similar to, I think, the penetrant build, it's just best for map farms where your explode carries. Stuff like Expedition, Stack Deck, Deadly Farm, Tier 70 Scarab, stuff like that. These like high density maps is really where these type of explode builds excel. Obviously stuff like Harbies and Beyond content is also really, really good. Next, move on to the last category here. It's just best builds for, niche content. So Ultimatum and Simulacrums, I think the Cast 1 Stun / AFK Chieftain or Gladiator from Miracles is also semi-league start viable. You don't really league start as it, but it's pretty cheap to get going now this late in the league. But yeah, it's just an AFK build. You can sit there, you press alternate wave like once every like 10 seconds. It's really, really chill. You can watch movies or play other games on the side. But yeah, great build to earn currency while semi-AFK if that's something you want to do. Can't really go wrong with this build. Just keep in mind, this build is only meant for Ultimatum and Simulacrums. Literally cannot do pretty much anything else in the game. It is just meant for this type of content. So if you're fine with that and want to play like a semi-AFK build, then yeah, obviously this is great. Sanctum, obviously a lot of builds can do Sanctum, but still the go-to and high-end Sanctum runner or league starter viable Sanctum runner is still a Penetranter. So you can play Elementalist or Inquisitor. I don't really have someone to recommend for this, but obviously PoE Ninja or YouTube, it's definitely still the go-to Sanctum build. Last but not least is Delve. I mean, honestly, you can just copy whatever Steve is playing or Connor. Either way, yeah, if you do want to do the Delve, check out one of those two. Steve doesn't do any video guides, but obviously you can see his profile. Connor does do video guides, so you can check out him if you want like a full video for delving. But yeah, so yeah, that's it for the builds I recommend. Honestly, there's definitely a lot of other viable builds this league, but in my opinion, these are the most meta-defining builds of this league. These are probably overall the best builds, at least for softcore trade. And once again, most of these builds will cost anywhere from 50 to 200 plus divines, depending on what you want to do. It kind of depends on the market, changes day by day. Obviously, the cheapest build is going to be the late league starter with Zerker Slams. But yeah, anyway, that's what I recommend. You can feel free to choose any of these builds and do exceptionally well on any of these. But yeah, anyway, that's about it. If you have any questions, feel free to comment below.